Welcome to the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Together we explore the vast landscapes of life, delving into the rich soil of experiences, sowing the seeds of curiosity, and harvesting the profound wisdom that each episode unfolds. Welcome to our next episode of Harvesting Wisdom, where we discuss sustainable climate-smart agriculture. I'm your host, Mike McMahon. My guests today are Dr. Joe and Rodolfo.
Yes, sir.
Alvarez. Dr. Joe.
Roselle.
Joe Roselle. You forgot his name already?
Yeah.
Too many doctors in my life.
Yes.
So welcome to today's podcast, and I'll probably, before we get started, we got to get down to the most important thing, which is getting the wine ready for all of us to lubricate us on our conversation here.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the wine?
Sure. This is a Primitivo, which is a Zinfandel.
Okay.
It's got a 7% Syrah to take it from a single node to a little more complexity. We've grown these grapes ourselves on our farm in the middle of the desert. With our lab tests show zero nutrient value. Not supposed to be able to grow, but we've started using our products on the farm, and we're actually changing the soil quite a bit. We think it's going to help with climate change for winemakers to be able to grow.
Smells pretty good.
Yeah.
You're a multi-generation wine grower, right?
Well, I wouldn't say wine, a grape grower. That's a little
grower.
bit different because I grew up in Buffalo, so we didn't grow. You could
Nothing.
have grown a white grape there, but my father, grandfather all made some kind of wine or vinegar. And I still have the original press from way back in the day. But anyway, cheers to all of you.
Cheers.
Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
And Rodolfo, so you guys are representing two of the companies that are all related. Rodolfo, you're with Soil, Seed, and Water.
Yes, sir.
And Joe, you're with Urban Farming Education.
Yeah.
So I'll start off with you, Rodolfo. What is Soil, Seed, and Water? And what's your role in it? And how has this evolved?
Yeah, so I believe Soil, Seed, and Water is the application of what we're doing here. We have Urban Farming Education, and then the application or the implementation could come from Soil, Seed, and Water. And that is because we are a large producer of compost, which is one of the most efficient products to restructure the the land where you farm. And also we produce vermicompost, which we get into the fun things when we start dealing with worms. Yeah. And then we have all of the soil amendments, organic soil amendments that obviously provide a lot of value to the earth. So I would consider Soil, Seed, and Water to be the implementation of what we're doing here, right? Which is climate sustainable agriculture, right?
Sure.
And my role at Soil, Seed, and Water is, besides being, Mike's personal assistant, sometimes,
I got lots of personal assistants.
Yeah. Besides doing that, what I try to do is implement innovative solutions and systems to make the company very efficient. I mean, we run an entire company that is incredibly efficient in the way we coordinate, we organize our company. And, I think Soil, Seed, and Water has something very unique in the components. And that is that we have one co-founder. His name is Dan Nowell. We got to get him in here, right?
Yeah,
It's a challenge. But this guy is passionate, and he dreams big, and sometimes he dreams too big. But then you combine Mike McMahon. He's a very well-structured man. He has an engineering background, so he's very logical and rational. So then you put them in the pot together, and what you have is a good company. But now you bring me into the mix, and I do stir the pot a little bit, and that is because I have fresh eyes. I know the new technologies. My background is in aerospace engineering. I'm only one semester away from completing my degree, and then what we're doing here is implementing all of that background, doing time and motion studies to make sure that the company is running efficiently. And we do, for the worms, we do population studies, and we try to implement the most innovative ways of producing our product, our sustainable product, using the most innovative way. So I am glad that I landed in Mike's company, because I think he is a person that, by the way, he's able to take a lot of, you can really criticize him on the things that he's doing, and he's going to let you grow. And also, he's a person that we, try to, he lets me be the, oh man, I don't have the words here, but he allows me to grow. He allows me to grow in the things that I want to learn, and I appreciate that. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you right now.
Are you trying to get a raise?
Don't get me blush.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah, and give me a raise, man. Come on.
So so I think part of this journey that I've been on for a long time is we have a lot of us we get fixed into our jobs and our positions, and we've got lives to live, right? Raising kids and going through different things in your life. But what I'm noticing is this kind of the separation, a little bit generational, between, and we're talking about harvesting wisdom. Wisdom kind of comes from knowledge and experience. So we've got a lot of older people. And, the kind of the banter between us older people is there's nobody to take over. There's not as many people going into STEM. There's, when I'm dealing with soil scientists in University of Oregon and the University at UC Davis, these guys are 75 years old, and they just say there's nobody coming into the professions. But I hear that in all these STEM professions. But then we have, we're harvesting that wisdom. We're taking people who are passionate, who have skills, that know things, and we're trying to pass it. The ideal thing is to pass it down, right? We know that we have to bring it down to a grade school level, really, to have an impact, because this is not, to be sustainable, all the things we're talking about, we're not taking a pill. It's not something that we're going to solve overnight. It's a long-term process. But then the other generation, that what we kind of miss is we didn't grow up with laptops and cell phones, but the younger generation did.
Yep.
And that's the way the world is going, right? And people their perspective of everything, of values and everything are different. And so some of these projects they're things that I know are a problem, and I bring them to you, and we solve them. And you can talk about a couple of them, but we have remote monitoring of the heat and the moisture in our compost. We're using we've got millions of dollars worth of large scale. I believe we're the largest, maybe in the Southwest, but certainly the largest in Arizona, doing what we're doing. We have systems in place for inventory control, but also our recipes, and then we also have the truck set up. So explain some of those innovations that you've more or less kind of pioneered, and the softwares that you're using are really new. I mean, less than a year old, a lot of them.
Yeah, so exactly that. We bring, what I try to do is bring new ways of looking at things, I mean, I can tell you a few months ago, there was the AI boom. So how are we integrating that into a unique, company like a compost company? And that's so, even crazy to think that we're going to be able to integrate AI into our systems. But the fact is that we have to be innovative, and we have to, make the product the best that we can. That's quality and quantity as well. We just moved 8,000 tons last week. So what I try to do is minimize, the efforts on communication. And like, for example, one of the things that he mentioned is the remote monitoring of compost. And obviously, compost, it has to go through a, very important process of, we call it thermophilic phase, where we basically get rid of all the pathogens. So what we integrate is literally remote technology that we can be analyzing the compost temperature at all times. So that's super interesting. But we also integrate, inventory technologies where we make sure that we are always, have the right ingredients, because the supply chain aspect of the business is very important. Sometimes, the suppliers might take, 2 months to have an ingredient. So we got to be aware of that. And what we try to do is have our product to be consistent, not only on the product quality side of things, but we also try to be consistent on the delivering of it. So we want to implement this systems that are efficient, and we do that with, monitoring the daily tasks that have to be done with, with composting, but we also do it with inventory, with the communication with the trucking companies, with the logistics and coordinating. So we run a very large operation, but we do it with only a few heads, which is very important, right? And so, yes, we can get in the technical aspects of this, but I think I'll make this podcast.
Well, let's go a little deeper
Okay,
into.
tell me.
We talk about composting. What exactly is that? Where are we? What do we? I mean, we're in large dairies, right? And then we're using big, heavy equipment. Maybe we're using big loaders and trucks, and we create these windrows, and we got 20-acre parcels for each one of these things. And you're right, we have to do the monitoring, we have to water, we got to turn, we got all
Yeah.
these different things going on. But then, what's this vermicompost? Explain. How are we doing that? What scale do we do that on too?
Yeah, so vermicompost is basically the derivative of compost in the way that we use compost to feed our worms. The worms eat the product, and then they digest it, and they create a much readily available, nutritious product. So when we look at compost, we look at making the structure so the land is able to absorb better water and also release it, and is able to, provide a lot of, make the structure or the conditions perfect for the plant to absorb, absorb the nutrients of the land. But when we're talking about now, vermicompost is when we get compost, we pass it through the digestive system of worms, and now worms create this much better product that is much better in the availability of the nutrients. So you put it into the soil, and it would also make your soil super, well structured to have good quality plants, but it also gonna provide a lot of nutrients. So that is the difference in vermicompost. And the scale that we do that, we have a 1/2 acre facility where we use this innovative method again on producing a vermicompost. The innovative method is called continuous worm farming,
Sure.
Yeah. So basically, this is so interesting to me. It's really interesting because the way that we can produce a product is that we have a big pile, and it's kind of hard to explain. Also, it's better if you see it, but we have a big row where we dry one side and we wet the other side. So the worm population lives on one side, but when we're ready to harvest or extract the valuable product, what we do is that we dry the other side, and we wet the other side. So literally, we move biology to the other side, and we are able now to collect the valuable product that is vermicompost.
Right. And then from there, we came to the realization that, we have, I don't know how many different markets: the landscape market, the golf course market, gardening market, the organic farmer market, and even the conventional market, right? That we have these products, and we've been working with a few people that I'm going to get on a future podcast. Our lab, we have 2 lab partners because everything gets tested over and over and over again. And then we have a gentleman in New Mexico, a guy, and one in California, Angus, who've been pretty instrumental in giving us
Yes.
lots of feedback. Really
Great people, by
experienced.
the way.
Yeah, and so we've come up. We came to the realization that not one size doesn't fit all, right? So,
Yeah.
and so we now have the retail products that people can use at home. We're selling through distributors, and we do sell in bulk. But explain a little of those products and how the technology, the what you implemented. It's really hard to explain, I think, verbally, but give it a shot and what we're doing, because it's really pretty amazing.
Yeah, and honestly, I want to portray myself as an authentic person. I want to tell you, and I want to be honest, I was not a person that was concerned about, farming or anything like that until I met Mike, and obviously I got a job with him, and I started listening a little bit more. So one of the things that we learn in soil, seed, and water is that land has properties. It can either be physical, chemical, or it can be biological, right? And those things are very important for, growing a very nutritious plant that you're able to eat from, right? So then when we look at the market, we figured out that maybe, for avocados, we need different composition of, ingredients. And another, it's going to be a derivative from compost, right? But we're going to add a few different elements that are going to make it better. So in the regard that in the aspect of changing the soil for the best condition on the specific plant that we're growing, we modify a few things and we make it so that it's optimal for the plant that we're growing. And that's in the three respects, physical, biological, and chemical. And you can explain that, but I also I don't want to take from that. Yeah.
But the system itself now, it has to be sophisticated, because how many different products do you have?
27.
27. So,
Yeah.
and some of them share some of the same ingredients,
Yes.
some are different. And these ingredients are coming, they're all organic.
Yes.
They're all OMRI certified, and they're coming from, mines, if it's
Yeah.
minerals we're putting in, or they're coming from, we do sea kelp, we do all kinds of different
Yep.
stuff. And it's kind of a difficult task to just, you realize you're short of one thing, and
Exactly.
you got to order. So what's the system that you put together and how's that work? And quick layman terms.
Okay, well, I'll put it super. So basically, we have different suppliers, right? We have suppliers all around the country. So what we do, and even outside the country too, right? Right. So what we do is that we estimate for each supplier how long it's gonna take, and based off that, basing ourselves on that, and basing on the time that that is gonna take our driver to go there and come back, or we're outsourcing some other trucking company, we're able to estimate, what are the times. But then you combine that with one supplier and you compare that through 10 different suppliers, they're going to have different times. So then what do we use? We use automations to figure it out. And what happens is that as soon as one product leaves, that is marked in the system. Guess what? A calculation is done to be able to estimate when do we need to do that. So it's very interesting, but it works
We
really well.
also had to come up with product names, brand names,
Yes.
and logos, and that was a project, right? We have a bag designer
Yep.
in Costa Rica, I think, and we're using a local guy that prints for us, and we get the bags. We got a bagging system. So this is all integrated into the system you're talking about, right?
Yes, 100%.
So yeah, so I think the concept right now, so we go, and it's kind of wide range from a retail selling worm composts or a soil amendment for turf or whatever it might be. It could be anywhere in the country that
Yes.
we're shipping this stuff. And then you have, like, the current order we're in the middle of is for a large farmer that we're shipping 19,000 tons of product to.
Yep.
It's over 900 semi-trucks of product. So it's different scale, different logistics, all of these things that that you're involved in, and so you're coming from a aeronautical engineering,
Yes.
con- and so the idea is this been a challenge? Is this like a major learning? Because it's all about learning. For me, it's all about learning, whether it's old guys using skill sets and learning new things and how to apply them and to do finally something in your life you want to do, or it's you're young and now you see. So for me, it's an optimistic viewpoint that I see. What's your take on that?
On how challenging
Yeah,
has it been?
challenging, and whether or not it opens your eyes for all the different things you can be involved with.
Well, first of all, yes, it has been challenging, and but it's the type of challenge that you enjoy, right? Because at the end of the day, you see the end product, and you realize that you were part of that, and that is what's really cool about it. If it was like abstract, and I was back, when I was doing the laboratories in aerodynamics, I didn't see that coming to fruition. So.
Right.
So it's really cool that I'm able to do this with soil, seed, and water, and it's really cool that, like I said, you let me grow so that I implement the things that I'm passionate about, and that gives you an advantage because now you have employees that not only do it for a paycheck, but they also do it because they like it. So I think it's really cool, honestly.
So we have in Joe. Your name's Joe, right?
I'm still here.
Oh yes, I was like, when are you gonna throw the ball to
We had to
Joe,
start
man?
talking. You've just recently come in. We've known each other for several years now. So why don't you explain this? You're from what's your background? And how did you come into here? And why did you choose to come to work here versus the other? I'll let you just kind of go on it.
I've kind of a unique education career where a lot of people, when they end up in administration, they taught for 10 or 15 years. Well, I spent the bulk of my career in administration. I taught for 3 years. I received 3 advanced degrees in education. I have 2 masters and a PhD. And after being a principal for 12 years, I transitioned into community engagement, and that's where we first met. And the transition for me was great because I love to engage with people. Working in public education, you quickly realize there's a lot of disparity. There's a lot of haves and have-nots. And as an educator, you have to be creative. You have to engage with the community in order to find a solution. So when we first met, it was during COVID, and I remember our district was trying to reach out and to actually engage when everyone else was pulling back. You in urban farming education were one of the few that said, you know what, let's roll up our sleeves. Let's help solve this problem. There's a lot of food insecurity. Whenever I tell people this story, they get blown away at a couple of numbers. With just a small organization, you were the driving force behind it, pull in 800 volunteers, which is amazing. But more importantly, we gave out 1 million pounds of food. So here's a great example of 2 people coming together, organizing a community, and actually solving a problem, which was fantastic. And that left a lasting impression on me. I had a couple of more years left in my career, so I couldn't pivot yet. But as I got closer and closer, I had some opportunities, but I circled back to you because I realized it's not just about making an impact. If I work for you in urban farming education, I'm going to have the opportunity to build capacity. I'll tell you right now, and you know this too, I've never met you for lunch or been around you without you saying, have you read this book? Have you read that book?
Oh my God.
And then he follows up on you, put you on the spot. It's like being on Jeopardy. But it's great because I started to transition. I've read over 300 books in education, but that was that application. Now I'm going into working for urban farming education, and we're doing community engagement and STEM gardens. But you're getting me to see the challenges or the system on a bigger level. And that to me is one of the reasons why I wanted to pivot to urban farming education. It's not about doing the work, it's about understanding the problem and the challenges as a global citizen and making an impact. The other thing that you've told me over and over again is we're about making sustainable solutions. So you're not about doing the work, you are actually one of those rare unicorns, I guess, that want to make a difference. And it's contagious. So when I look at the work that we're doing and the people that we're partnering with, urban farming education is probably one of the few nonprofits where you want to engage people. You want to take people to Africa. You want to engage people that have the capacity to actually invest and be part of the process. That is rare. Most nonprofits I work with, they want your money. They want you to sit on the sideline. They want to invite you for dinner, but you're like, no, roll up your sleeves, read this book, come to Africa with me, or work within your community and help me solve a problem.
Yeah.
So once I heard that, I just said, I'm in.
And the terms that I got from you early on was community and capacity,
Yes.
right? And I had a vague understanding of both, but community this, community that. It was like pass the community when we were eating lunch. It was like constant. But then I realized that what we've been doing for several years before we worked with you is we did build a lot of gardens. We connected with people, but what makes these gardens so they're not sustainable is this lack of the building the community. And if you look at it on a small scale, which is how we operate, community in a school, it means the cafeteria, it means the landscaper, it means the teachers, the principal, it means the entire district has to be involved. And then from there, it's the student engagement and the parents, and then all the organizations of people that are supporting the school in the neighborhood or vice versa. And without that kind of involvement, you go in and you put in a garden, it's one enthusiastic teacher who moves, the following year and the garden fails. In Africa, it's the same concept. So, I was reluctant to then realize, okay, that's what the missing ingredient is. And I can tell you, and I won't mention the books or the big time people building gardens throughout the country, and or engaged in agriculture and agricultural philanthropy worldwide, whether it's the UN or what the WHO, they're kind of missing this holistic approach, and it starts with the hardest thing possible, which is people. But without it, you just can't do anything. You just can't throw money at the problem. That's where we've had problems, right? So on a small scale, community is important. But as we see, we have community breakdown at each level. And when we're even working with it to try to build this conversational capacity within these groups, as we see now worldwide, we're on war number, how many, who knows, but we're in Israel, we're in the Ukraine, and it's every decade we're someplace else. If you look at the anatomy of peace, we're as people we're not, our hearts are not peaceful at all. We're always at war, and it has to do with this complete lack of community. So community became all of a sudden the key thing. The other concept is capacity. You talked about it, and I was like, okay, capacity, I kind of understand what the word is. But then I started reading books on capacity, and I started to realize also, what you were talking about. And now it's kind of the three pillars of UFE. So walk me through that concept of capacity from community, from agriculture to education, which is what we do, because you're kind of the beginning of the architect, you and Bordeaux.
Yeah, and for me, it was a 7-year painful experience of learning through my mistakes too. And for me, community equals sustainability. Whenever you try to have systemic change in a community, or you need it to engage everybody. I found out really quickly when I started doing community engagement in the community I was in that everybody was siloed. Everybody had their own initiative. Everybody wanted their own program. So we were spending the same resources trying to solve the same problem with the same people. There was an example when we started our food giveaways, the church across the street was having a food giveaway on the same day. And they looked at us and we looked at them and we're like, what are we doing? So we realized that we were wasting a lot of time and resources in order to accomplish the same goal. And that's pretty typical in communities because there's a lack of an organization, like an urban farming organization that can pull them together. There's a lot of institutions like the schools, the churches that are in the government that have kind of fallen down and they've become disconnected. And because of that, there really isn't any agency or group that's been able to pull them together. And in hearing about the projects in Africa, it's kind of the same thing. Everybody is kind of disconnected. So to have an agency or a nonprofit like Urban Farming Education, they could come together and pull everybody together. It's great. But what mistake a lot of nonprofits do is they focus too much on an event. And you don't want to do that. Really, what you want to do is build capacity to sustain change. Now, the interesting thing about that is if you read the documents from the United Nations, which are addressing sustainability in Africa, what they're saying is you can't just dump money into Africa and expect to solve the problem. You really have to build capacity. You have to educate. You have to engage the community. You have to teach them how to have long systemic change over time. And the funny thing about that is, even in my own community here in Arizona, it was the same thing. I had to teach people how to collaborate. I had to teach people how to market, how to organize, how to work together in order to achieve a goal. So the funny part of it is, the ironic part of it is, I know we have projects here in Arizona and Africa, but really the challenges are very similar. Now, the focus in Arizona is the school. We want to increase STEM education. In Africa, it's about sustainable farming for sustenance so that they can eat. But even with that, the challenges with the capacity and the community are the same.
Right. Now, you just mentioned STEM, so let's go a little into that because we have, at this point, a couple of initiatives, and one is STEM. And why is STEM important, and who's that targeting? We've just had Kim and the Rolillos in here, and we interviewed them about their approach, and they're more in the educational capacity building, I guess, with professional development. But what's your take on the whole STEM initiative?
Well, there's the practical reasoning, and then there's my personal reasoning why I want to see STEM education move from a class or a club to having every student receive quality STEM instruction. The practical reason, you can get online and see a ton of resources that say we're not closing the gap. We have way more STEM jobs than we have graduates that are willing to go into those professions. So there's a lot of times when those professions go unfilled. So there's a lot of companies out there that are trying to connect with schools and encourage kids to become more engaged in the STEM professions. But one of the interesting things, I just met with the president of the American Council of Engineering Companies. He says, you know what? Even though we recognize this demand, we still don't know how to bridge the gap between industry and schools. And that's the great thing about urban farming education. We make it approachable. We need to have a curriculum so that the teachers can teach STEM instruction because they don't have that capacity normally in grades 6 or kindergarten through 6. We need to have structures and activities where companies can come in and engage the schools because they don't feel comfortable doing it, and there really isn't any programming. Now, I said that there's a personal reason. One of the things I'd say about some jobs, too, is they're high-paying jobs. And when I've worked for Title I schools, I wanted every one of my students to have the opportunity to pursue a high-paying job. And if we're not offering quality education or opportunities for STEM, then they're not going to be able to engage. We talk about kids in general not going into it, but there's a gender gap. There's a gap between white kids and kids of color. More white males go into STEM than any other group. The only way we're going to solve that is to give every single student the opportunity, male, female, regardless of where they come from, the opportunity to engage in high-paying jobs.
Yeah. Now, where would you say the immediate future is for urban farming, Rodolfo, for you, and projects that you're trying to launch and get moving on? And then I'll ask the same question of you, Joe. What's coming next?
Before I answer, can we get a little more wine? Also, any comments on the wine, or
Well, I'm drinking
what is going
mine,
on here?
you know.
Well, Mike, you're a sommelier, and there's not a lot of times when you actually get to sit down with a sommelier. How would you describe the wine?
Yes,
Because you're talking about two guys that are like, oh, it tastes like fruit roll-up. So we don't want to describe it that way.
You know, I'd say it's a medium body wine, and it's would be great if we had some
Like
maybe
a
little bit of
charcuterie board?
meat or a charcuterie board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next time
Next time we're gonna bring a
that,
steak or-
right? So, but what's amazing is that it's grown here in Arizona in horrible conditions, and it tastes pretty good right off. This is the first vintage, which is a 21, and we've got a 22 that comes out in January, and then
Oh.
a 23. Now we don't sell this stuff; we just give it away in our process, and we pretty much give it away to clients and or people who are participating in urban farming education.
Well,
But
hold on. You said that it's very difficult to grow this here. So if it's so difficult, how are you able to grow? Like, what are you
Yeah,
using?
what are you doing, man?
We're turning the tables on them now, right?
we don't want to get caught off in this, but we used a Paulson rootstock, and we grew two different grapes. The Pinot Grigio did not do as well; couldn't handle, I guess, the heat. But we are using a protocol, so the first 5 or 6 years with this, where we were, we have two different locations, and we got deer that came in every night and just munched the grapes down to the ground. It's ridiculous, and we had similar issues with javelina in the central area. But so I thought there's no way this stuff is never, was these
Survive.
grapes. You talk about grapes need to suffer. These grapes suffered, right? And then we did harvest, and we noticed that we didn't get completely through veraison, which was an indicator that there wasn't enough nutrient value. But we were able to grow this. It's pretty well balanced. It's I think a 14 or 14.6 in alcohol, and it's got a pretty good flavor to it.
I like it. I like it
It's
personally.
got some
I like it.
complexity, but the thing is a couple of years ago we started our protocol, so we started putting compost down on the entire property, the entire vineyard, and then last year we started to add a couple of cups of vermicompost, and now we have the Bacchus blend that you were
Yes.
part of blending.
So
which-
soil is a huge part of wine growing.
Soil's huge,
Okay.
and then just using it's like anything in agriculture. It's land management, but it's also crop rotation, cover crops. So we try to encourage even weed growth in the summertime to help shade the soil a little bit. And the process has been pretty good. We are spraying an organic. This year, we're going to start spraying an organic foliar with phosphate to get it to go all the way through veraison. We've got to do a little better job of actually thinning out the grape clusters so that there's more nutrient value going to each one. But these are issues that all wine growers have, and we think that this is kind of a key to growing anything, right? But this is just one crop, and we think that we see it. You're in Bordeaux. They're experimenting with new, which is unimaginable that they're not just using Cab Franc and Cabernet and Merlot, but they're looking at different varieties and such that can be a little more drought tolerant. We know we firmly believe with some of our products that we can retain as much as 20% more moisture, and if we can continue using cover crops and we're using the correct practices, that we're able to grow anywhere. If you can grow in 117 degrees,
That's amazing. I didn't think soil would make such a difference in water retention.
Oh yeah, soil's everything when it comes to the solution for the planet, right? So we have, drought, and if you really look at our global problems, there's two big industries. The number one industry is agriculture. It's the number one since humans have been here because we all have to eat.
Yes.
But it's also the biggest impact on our problems. Climate change it has to do with a lot of the chemicals that are going up into our atmosphere and causing global warming, a lack of carbon sequestration, there's just a tremendous amount that agriculture is both responsible for, but also changing agriculture processes will also help to kind of remediate soils and to reverse some of these issues. That's the positive part of that. But from an urban farming standpoint now, what do you see coming up? I have my own dreams that I don't even want to articulate that we're really trying to
Yeah, and we've talked about this, and there's some short-term goals. We want to try to increase our network. We obviously want to be in more schools. There's a large group of nonprofits and people out there that just love to garden. And that's part of the equation too. So we want to increase our volunteer base. We're starting to get more partners from STEM industry. We want to get them engaged too. That's a big part of the process. But part of it is going to be the shift into looking at the curriculum. I know that Peter and Kim are in here, and I truly believe it's important to have a foundation of science and STEM for all teachers to teach, because the reality of it is K-6 teachers don't have that foundation. But once you go from there, we talked about capacity building, and kids really need to understand the impacts of the decisions of corporations or countries on how they manage their water, how they grow their food, the impact it's going to make on their future. So getting them to understand about water scarcity, about soil, about vermiculture, for them on a personal reason, so they can grow their own food, maybe have food sovereignty, but also to be objective when looking at policy and become global citizens in the future. That's really important. So it's not just about putting a garden in, and STEM's really important, but it's really getting them to understand on what are the big implications when it comes to farming.
Yeah, and how do you see the connection between the two companies? How do you guys see that?
Yeah, so I'm going to be fully transparent. My goal is to make Soil Seed and Water have the best quality of product as well as consistency and production. But we do collaborate. Like we have events, and we have a fundraising coming on November 8th. And we're gonna collaborate. What we do is basically we show the applications and implementations. Like we're gonna have methods of growing. We're gonna even have a robotic garden, man, which is pretty cool. I imagine. Now you're
Absolutely.
integrating technology and agriculture. What can that bring? So we do collaborate on that aspect. Obviously, urban farming education is about educating, and it's about teaching people how to grow. And for that, we have a great leader, which is Joe Roselle. So I think that's the way we collaborate.
But I'm going to circle back what you said before, harvesting wisdom. I'm retiring, but we have somebody that's engaged, that's new, that's innovative. We need to get our young kids in to see that. Because honestly, having a STEM garden at the school is great. Going to a mine is great, but going to a place where the application is happening with Rodolfo and Soil, Seed, and Water is where it needs to go. The kids need to see it. The teachers need to see it, so that they can push kids towards those fields. I love the conversation when you talked about the innovation in Soil, Seed, and Water, because it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You can embrace technology. You can embrace innovation. It doesn't matter whether it's agriculture, whether it's technology, or whatever it is. So I see us partnering in the future. I think you said it best. You're the application. We need to get kids in to the worm farm to see this application happening in real time.
And we're using the products, right? I mean,
Right.
from Soil Seed.
Oh, that's a
Water.
great point. Yeah. So when we put in a STEM garden, we're actually using the innovative soil from Soil, Seed, and Water.
Except in the other concept that we have is, like, especially in Africa, but even locally here, we are teaching these techniques on a small scale: how to compost, how to vermicompost, how to blend. Look and maybe taking a soil analysis and seeing what you might need to amend the soil with.
That's very important.
Right.
Yes.
So these are all items that you have. My first company, Agave, is landscaping is really part of agriculture as well. I had to learn about water systems, whether we're pumping from the ground or pumping canals or potable water source, how we basically the water irrigation. We have, to a degree, when you have to look at fertility, not so much because you're in and out, but in the maintenance portion of the business,
Yep.
which is the primary driver, is the maintenance is it's the same thing as maintaining a farm. You got water management. You can't have runoff. You have to have water absorption. You got to keep a plant alive. And not just alive, but to flourish it. So these are all similar concepts across the board.
But just to ask and get some clarification, I know you and I have talked about this before. Part of the UN's climate sustainable solutions is to actually produce a product locally. So doing what we do here in Arizona, we're not going to ship it to Africa.
No, not at all.
So we're going to actually produce it, use the techniques we're using with Soil, Seed, and Water, and actually in Africa and other parts of the world.
Right. So we've had Great success with the compost. It was crazy
Yep.
because the soil over there is actually great in the climate. In southeastern Africa, people don't realize how incredible this place is, right? I mean, the safaris and the Victoria Falls and Botswana's Delta, and the people are just really genuine, beautiful people. So it's a great place, but the climate is like California even better. You know, it's like pretty steady year round, and the soils are generally pretty good, right? You've got the Great Lakes where Malawi sits, and you've got some old volcanic soils. And overall, you've got pretty good soil and pretty good water. But what we realized when we composted, when we added the two together, it became like the perfect soil, which is harder in the desert here. You know, think in terms of, farming. The desert is a bit of a challenge for everything you're doing, but which is great because if we can learn how to do it here, we can do it anywhere. We have, wasn't there the Make the Mesa Green? What was
Make
that?
the Mesa Green Initiative.
What's
Yes,
that
that's when we turn like unfertile sand into fertile farmland, which is super interesting when everybody gives up on a piece of land and you come with these new methods and you put something on, and out of nowhere you're able to grow food. So that's incredibly amazing. And to your point, what you were talking about, when we look at compost, the one of the biggest cost of composting is transporting it. So it's not sustainable to do compost and try to ship it around the world, right? We're not gonna do that. The only way that we can make a model that works for everybody is teaching and recreating and putting that system in some other place like Africa, like places that need it. So I think that is a very important concept, which is the education as the remodel that we can always implement in other parts.
Well, I've got to wrap up. I appreciate my guests here today. You guys are instrumental in what we do. Dr. Joe Roselle, Urban
You got it.
Farming Education. I'll get your name one of these days. Rodolfo Alvarez,
Thank you,
Soil,
thank you,
Seed, and
thank you.
Water. Thank you for coming today. And,
Can I just mention the website?
Oh yeah. How do people get a hold of you?
Yes, we're really excited. We're doing a lot of change to our website. If you go to weareufe.org, we have a calendar which you can sign up for professional developments. You can learn about all of our activities. We also have a donor page. So if you're a STEM company or if you're a small business and you want to sponsor a STEM garden, our goal is to have 10 by May. I think we're going to probably hit that before January 1st, so we're really excited. Yeah. So check us out. We're going to be launching our newsletter this week as well.
Yeah, and I guess if we're talking about websites, why don't we shout out my website? So soil,
did you create
seed,
it?
no, yeah, partially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the website for soil, seed, and water is literally that, but with the .com. So soilseedandwater.com. And we have a section there where you can obviously buy product, but also there's a learn and grow section where we're gonna I start adding a lot of content, a lot of material from mainly this podcast, but also we're gonna try to have blogs and some other educational resources and tools that people can use. So yeah.
.com for you, .org for you.
Correct.
Yes.
And I appreciate your time today, and let's keep working.
Hey, we appreciate the wine. So cheers.
Almost done with mine.
Thank you for joining the Harvesting Wisdom podcast. Like, share, and subscribe for ongoing insightful conversations. Explore our webpage for additional resources and visit our guest webpage for deeper insights. Your engagement is the foundation of our journey. Until next time, keep pursuing wisdom.